Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and today we are finally going to be talking about the newest album from Kamelot, The Shadow Theory. So when a band gets 12 albums into their career, hell, what's even left for me to say? Their high and low points are very well known, their best and their worst albums, as are their moments of genre experimentation and flair. They become an established quantity within the scene, and unless there is a massive paradigm shift, there becomes very little for critics like me to say when they pump out new entry, and yet Kamelot has been a little different. Most because their past few records have been a pretty stark departure in sound with their new frontman Tommy Karavik. The symphonic bombast has been ramped up considerably, the tones are more aggressive and borderline progressive, and while Silverthorn was pretty damn solid in its own right, their 2015 follow-up Haben featured two of the best songs of that year, and easily one of the best power ballads of the decade in Under Gray Skies. It's a killer song. It was a height that Kamelot had not reached in any capacity for me in over a decade, and thus I was genuinely curious how they could possibly follow that up, or if the album could match the extremely high quality of some of the more individual cuts that came before. Now, granted, this is also coming with the departure of their longtime drummer Casey Grillo, but replacement Johan Nunez had a respectable pedigree in melodic death metal, and I was confident that Kamelot could still deliver something worthwhile. So alright, what do we get with The Shadow Theory? Alright, here's the thing. This is the sort of project that I'm not surprised that Kamelot made in 2018, because when you're this far into your career, when you put out this many albums, and you're looking to make a modern symphonic power metal record that can appeal to more of a metal mainstream audience, some of the choices that Kamelot made are to be expected. They will probably satisfy some of the diehard fans. But as someone who's not a diehard fan, and who knows the heights to which Kamelot can reach, yeah, I'm sorry, this fell short for me. Not a bad record by any stretch, but one that does not have the soaring high points of their best, and ultimately suffering under some of the artistic choices made for the sake of modernization or updating the sound that just do not flatter the band in the same way. In other words, yes, it is a decent album, but it's not one I see myself revisiting very often. It's alright, it's good, but it is definitely not great. And to understand where I'm coming from on this, I want to start off by focusing on what Kamelot has done right throughout their career, because the strengths of this group are pretty damn distinctive and pretty iconic at this point. Like the past two albums, Tommy Karavik remains an absolute powerhouse behind the microphone. He's a singer with huge dramatic range, a ton of charisma, a lot of real smooth presence. And while there are a few songs that don't quite give him the same space he could use properly and effectively, they are definitely in the minority, as his singing is a high point, genuinely excellent. And while I could argue that Jennifer Haben of Beyond This Black isn't quite as impressive as Charlotte Wessels was on Under Gray Skies, that's more because the ballad she has to work with isn't quite as strong in the composition, and even with that, she still does have good chemistry with Karavik. And who I found even more impressive was Lauren Hart of Once Human, who contributes both the clean vocals and growling to multiple songs on this album, and I would say she's a solid step above what Alyssa White-Glues did on Haben. But of course, at the end of the day, what makes Kamelot so compelling to me at any level are how those vocal performances are married to these huge symphonic hooks, at their best anchored by Thomas Youngblood's meticulous guitar work and excellent solos. And on cuts like the minor key driven, strings assisted Phantom Divine Shadow Empire, or the more traditional symphonic metal bombast of Vespertine, My Crimson Bride, Kamelot, they absolutely get there. Easily the best two songs on this album, and any concerns I had about Johan Nunez were very quickly put to rest, because while I wouldn't quite call his drum work overly complex or progressive, it is aggressive and complex enough to fill in the rhythm section without getting distracting, and his interplay with a lot of the bass lines, really quite good. I liked his stuff here. And if anything, I wish I could say more about his contributions, but this is where we have to get to the production and the synth choices for this album, and if there is a place that Kamelot stumbles hard, it is here. For starters, I have no idea why there is any need to include programmed percussion at all. You've got a great new drummer, blatantly synthetic drum machines, they just do not have the depth and the knack for organic cadence that you really need with a more organic symphonic arrangement. And even if they did, it's not like this is an Arion album where those tones can actively play a role in defining more of the atmosphere. Yes, I kind of get why with some of the lyrical themes, and we'll get to this, but not really enough. But those drum machines, I'll admit it, they do feel more cohesive with the buzzy, tinny, frequently unnecessary synths like on Amnesiac and Burns to Embrace that I'd be inclined to say are industrial, but don't have anything close to the roiling groove to be all that effective. And you know what? Even if they were just clutter in the mix, they wouldn't be precisely bad, but the placement of these tones is often right at the very front of the mix and right at the top. A thin, filmy distortion that only gets more irritating when they actively lie on top of or push back more interesting symphonic melodies or the guitar line, like on Kevlar Skin, or the hook of Stories Unheard. And while this can happen with higher backing vocals as well, like on Ravenlight, and also not work, it's at least trying to add some bombast. I'll kind of give it credit there. And you know what? It would be one thing if those synthesizers and those electronic tones were actively contributing to the melodic arrangement, but they seem to be added more for texture than actual contributing tone, which only serves to diminish the great hooks and guitar work, or even worse, provide some substitution for melody when the guitar tone gets a little bit chunkier and heavier. Hell, on songs like Ravenlight and Mindfall Remedy, it only seems to make the songs sound more choppy and staccato and contribute very little to the groove or the flow of the song, and that's an issue. And that's not even counting the more processed guitar tones that have all the tinny shrillness but none of the actual body to be all that impressive or memorable. Yes, even on the solos. I know that Youngblood's a great guitarist, but pick a better tone. And let's be honest, is there any really much of a point going into these lyrics? The band has stressed there's something of a theme to this record, tied to the idea of shadows of the mind and the psychological insecurity that might come with them. But the larger truth is that unless Kamelot is aiming to tell a more cohesive story, a little bit more of a narrative going on here, the broad strokes of their writing rarely manage to be all that compelling or distinctive within their genre. And on this album, look, even if the more synthetic elements in the production were intended to reinforce totalitarian paranoia in the modern age, the melodrama we get on songs like Ravenlight or Kevlar Skin is definitely pushing it for me. Although in the latter cases, more comes with a nitpick that if you're going to push for some sort of future dystopia, defaulting to modern brand names or technology always feels like a cop-out. Happened on the last Arion album too, I didn't like it there. Now there are thematic undercurrents of some individualism between songs like Mindfall Remedy and Amnesiac, and you know what, even some of the melancholic elements of In the Twilight Hours, that can work. But when it's juxtaposed against all the melodrama and the self-flagellation, it reads as more self-absorbed than outright cohesive surrounding any sort of larger theme surrounding psychological shadows. Hell, the more I traced through the lyrics, the more I found that the flowery romanticism that we got on songs like Vespertine, My Crimson Bride, or even the abstraction of Static, they had more staying power than what a surface reading of what Epica is done with far more philosophical heft. Now granted, this is symphonic metal, and I've always said that lyrics are seldom, if ever, the main focus, even in their best songs, but when you don't have that deeper story, and you do have such a good singer with Tommy Karavik, you wish that you had a little bit more of what he's singing had some dramatic weight to it, especially when the thinner synthetic production elements seem to be actively detracting from it and him as extension. But as a whole, look guys, I'm sorry, this was a letdown. Again, it's not a bad album. When Kamelot has throughout their career hit that high watermark, for them to make a record with textures and writing that be closer to a group like Delane, that's a problem. Especially when it comes at the expense of those huge symphonic hooks that have been at their core strength. It's been the consistent element throughout their entire career. Now look, it's far from the worst record they've ever made, but it's definitely a step back from Haben, netting a 6 out of 10 from me and only a recommendation for the die-hard fans. But if you're looking to get into Kamelot, I recommend start off with 2001's Karma, 2003's Epica, and 2005's The Black Halo. Then maybe coming into Silverthorn, Haven, and then only then maybe this. And even then, if I'm being honest, I'm not sure you're going to be missing much. Sorry. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I know it took me a while to get to this. I wish it was a lot better too, guys. I was really hoping this was going to be awesome, and it's just not nearly as much as it should be. Beyond that, if you want to actually take a look at the record, you want to buy it, links down there below. And I got the pull up there for all you Kamelot fans. Tell me how wrong I am. Looking forward to it. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process or support this channel so records like this get reviewed faster and earlier, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. You guys actually want to see a schedule, it's linked on my Instagram below, and keep in mind for Patreon, I've restructured things to be on a per month basis, not a per video basis, so you guys can get more bang for your buck if you actually contribute. Happy to see you guys over there, but until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.